Hello, Lockdown Diaries day 35. Today I just wanted to do a quick talk on East Timor, which was quite an influential place on my trip. Hard to quite see it there, but it's it's that little dash there. I've marked my route on this map, and it's hard to see it, but essentially East Timor is there, and then Indonesia is this sort of chain of islands here that then crosses to Malaysia, up to Thailand, over Burma, Nepal, etc. So East Timor just sits across from Darwin there. Darwin's there, and then you got the Timor Sea into East Timor, and then West Timor, and then across into Indonesia. So I just wanted to do a quick talk on that, really. Wait a minute. So for me, East Timor was pretty much the first non-Western country I'd ever been to. I've got to be honest. So I'd set off on this trip from Sydney to London. You know, you ride through Australia, and it's kind of daunting, the scale of it, but it's still perfectly accessible because of the language and the currency that you're used to, and kind of a shared culture, I suppose. So you know, you've got big distances, but you can still get on with the dynamics of life. But crossing on that, I had to fly, and the bike had to go on a cargo boat over to East Timor. Was the point at which I kind of hit the developing world, or the non-Western world at least. So it was a big baptism of fire for me, and I think I think for anyone going on a big trip, I think that point is going to come at some point. And I was kind of glad that it came so early on. I think if I'd have ridden from England to Australia, well, I don't know, maybe, you know, the gradual movement east as you entered into sort of Greece, Turkey, and then into maybe Iran would have fed you in nice and gentle. Whereas going from Australia straight into East Timor was kind of a drop in at the deep end, and I suppose I needed that to really shake myself up and get myself ready for the journey ahead. And I always saw, in reflection, the stretch of East Timor in Indonesia being the real baptism of fire of that trip, simply because it was so different to everything I'd known before, so different to our normal way of life. East Timor, for those who don't know, was part of Portugal, or part of Portugal's colony, all the way up until 1975, when I think there was a resistance to Portugal being there. The Portuguese left, and then the Indonesians who were occupiers, or West Timor was essentially Indonesian. So as soon as the Portuguese left the eastern side of the island, pretty much the next day the Indonesians came over the border and then occupied East Timor, and that became Indonesian. There was obviously a difference of religion. West Timor Indonesian was Islamic, East Timor was Christian, so there was a big difference. And for the sort of 25 years that followed, it was kind of a brutal regime or occupancy of East Timor. There's reported to be as many as 100,000 died due to starvation and massacre, and whether it was genocide is probably a step too far, but it just obviously wasn't a good time for East Timor. And then, quite surprisingly, in 1999 or thereabouts, there was basically a referendum offered by the Indonesians to the people of East Timor. Do you want your independence back? I guess it was the Brexit of East Timor, and unwittingly, or to the Indonesians at least, the East Timor said, yes, we would like our independence back, and that was granted. And there's stories written of how the Indonesians basically sailed out of port, a symbolic gesture of leaving in front of the papers and things and the media, and then literally the next day sailed back in the other side and reoccupied Indonesia. So from 1999 onwards, when it got its independence, there was a good few years of tumultuous fighting between, I guess, the newly independent East Timor, which was backed by the UN, and the UN forces, and the Indonesians who still wanted East Timor to themselves. So it was a very unsettled time, and even when I entered in 2009, there was a lot of UN soldiers there. There'd be the Australian Army patrolling the streets, a lot of UN aid forces and trucks, and a lot of charities there, Western charities. It was actually quite an eye-opener in that regard as well, just seeing the impact that the aid agencies and the UN and things like that have on a place like East Timor. You know, I don't think it didn't always leave me with a positive experience of what was going on there with regard to the aid agencies. It seemed as though the workers there sort of lauded it up as a higher tier of civilization. They would come in they would have servants and they would have guarded houses and they would have almost create their own catering places and restaurants and things, almost to create their own industry and society on top of the original inhabitants that they were there to help. And so it was a very difficult thing to see, to witness, because you think, well, these people are there to help, but at the same time there's a lot of money trading at hands. And the UN, the big Toyota dealership had opened up in this impoverished capital of Dili to service the vehicle needs of all the aid agencies. And you thought, I don't know, it's kind of not right really, but it was an eye-opening experience. And I guess initially you felt nervous, and I felt nervous. The British consulate had advised UK nationals not to go, so therefore that means your travel insurance is null and void. If you go somewhere, you're not advised to go. And I think it's for such reasons that a lot of people bypass East Timor and Indonesia completely on the Sydney to London route. They would sail from Darwin to Singapore and miss that out, which I think is a big shame. It's not easy getting the bike there. You have to find a cargo depot at Darwin who will ship the bike, and then you have to fly. And I think the cost back then was about $250 for the bike. I think it's gone up quite a lot now, sort of $600 or $700 I hear. And the bike takes 2 weeks, and you obviously fly in and then wait for it. You don't need a carnet. You get your visa on arrival, and the process of finding your bike at the dock is completely chaotic, because you go down to the dock, you've got a bit of paperwork, and nobody there knows what you're there for or whatever, and you're just rebounding and ricocheting from place to place. And obviously nobody speaks English, and you don't speak the dialect there. The dialect of I can't remember the name of the exact dialect, but it's a formulation of Portuguese and Indonesian. And so you don't understand, and you get rebounded around everywhere and told to come back, and then you go back the next day, and then they want to fob you off another day. So quite a hair-pulling exercise. Then finally you get shown and told where to go, and then a man will call over a taxi and he'll take you to, in this case it was like a clearing in the forest where all the containers were dropped off, and then you find a man in a porter cabin and give him your papers, and he'll walk down the line, find the right container, and then open the doors, unload everything else in front of the bike, and then eventually out the wheel this postie bike, in my case, that sailed across the Timor Sea. So a very unnerving experience. And then obviously I guess the remnants of the war. There was a lot of talk of spies still being in East Timor from the West Timor, sort of guerrilla tactics, and I don't know whether it was the anti-malaria tablets or just the sense of what I was doing. I was very nervous and apprehensive and distrusting. One day a guy came to the guest house I was staying at, and he wanted to take me up into the mountains and show me around, and I thought, no, I'm not going. So I didn't go, and it's a shame, but I think you are what you are. You're very nervous and raw in those early days, and it takes a while to settle in. And thankfully there were some of the guys staying there's only one hostel in town, and we all stayed there, me and a few others who were on the island, sort of holiday makers, I guess, or adventure holiday makers, and we went out. They rented bikes next door at a petrol station, and then we went out exploring the island and things for the day. And it just took me a few weeks to get confident. But it's a beautiful island. It's a great place to explore on a motorbike. Very jungle, mountainous, and brilliant coastal roads and villages and old Portuguese ruins and things like that. And the people were, I think the people were perfectly friendly and never had any problems. And it feels a long way off the development stage of somewhere like Bali or I don't know, Flores or somewhere like that. It feels like it's still a land that time forgot. Certainly outside of Dili, where all the UN and the aid workers were. So, East Timor for me was a real interesting start to the journey. And I know a few people who've been up there since, and it seems to be getting easier and more transitable. And there's companies there that rent bikes out, so you can fly in and rent a bike and go around, tour companies and things. So it is westernising or developing a tourist industry, which in a way is a good thing, but then in another way, you see what impact tourism industry has on the neighbouring islands of Flores, of Lombok and Bali as you go along Indonesia, and you kind of wonder if tourism infrastructure is really what those people need, certainly after the decades of war and things. But I guess it's a way countries evolve and the world evolves with them. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about East Timor, basically just the apprehensions and fears that you have in those initial stages of the journey, and how it takes a while for that to settle and for your confidence to build. And so riding, as I did, from Dili out of East Timor to the border with West Timor, I was very nervous, so kind of frightened really. I was frightened, I was paranoid of the people that might wish to do harm to me. And you do read of the stories. A couple of UN workers in one of the bordering towns were murdered in 2001, etc. So bad things did still happen on the island, or had still happened recently on the island, and it makes you keep your wits about you. If I was to give any advice on how to be safe, it would just be to, as we've talked in other videos, trust your instinct, trust your gut. So I didn't go into those mountains with that guy, but maybe that was a good thing. Maybe that would have ended badly, but my instinct there said don't go. It doesn't feel safe. I think it's because he'd been curious about what I was doing and just asking too many questions. So when somebody asks too many questions, what do they want? And so that triggered in my mind that maybe this guy wasn't really good for me to hang around with. So I'd not gone. And I think, trust in your instincts. And I remember that first night when I crossed the border into West Timor and slept in the first town. I slept with a chair wedged against the door and a penknife under my pillow and a hammer that I carried under the pillow. And I met a French couple who said maybe it was the malaria tablets I was taking, but it is what it is, real or imagined fears, and they're both just as debilitating as each other, or difficult to manage, or as important as each other. Whether it's a real danger or an imagined danger, you still feel danger. But as you move west, and I'll do a video in Indonesia, as you go west, it just really opens up, and you get more comfortable as you go. But East Timor was the complete baptism of fire on my world trip, and I would imagine it's the same if you go down into Africa. That leap off from Spain into Morocco, then you're going to get you straight into it again, or if you were to ship your bike into South America, straight into it again. And I think somebody else commented on a video, the technique is to act confident even if you're not, and I think that's a very good technique. If you look like you're going to get blown over in the wind, people will take advantage, or at least try to, and so you do have to stand with a slightly leant forward approach and not be aggressive but be assertive, certainly to help you in those early days, and not to give you people the impression of fear. But it definitely made me a more astute, strong, confident traveller those early days of East Timor and Indonesia. But East Timor is a fascinating place. What will happen to it in the future? Australia's got involved because there's a lot of oil mining, oil drilling rights just off the land of it, and obviously Australia want them for themselves, but so do the Indonesians, and it feels like East Timor sort of still, even to this day, trapped in this political bubble of to and fro from its neighbours who are more powerful and influential. While the UN are there, who knows? I mean, again, whether the UN are doing them good or not, you heard stories about how the UN were inflating the price of grain or giving out free rice, therefore putting the local producers out of business, and then the UN would remove that free rice, and therefore there'd be no supply of local grain, no supply of local rice, and therefore the islanders would start to starve or go hungry, and then become more dependent on the free handouts, which came with an exchange of natural resources. So I felt for the people of East Timor. They have not had an easy time for centuries, let alone decades. So check it out. If you're ever in that area, North Australia, jump on a plane, head over to Dili, go and see Rita at the smokehouse just down the road. She'll look after you. All right, take it easy. Cheers.